Welcome to Moving Up North. I'm Will York.
And I'm Harry Gray.
On the podcast today, we've got our first guest interviewees. It's very exciting.
How exciting.
They are all winners of the Walk Ride GM Awards that happened just before Christmas.
We're going to split the episodes into 3. So we're going to have 2 winners on each podcast, which gives us a lot of people to interview and talk about. And, it's going to really energize, the sort of debate around active travel.
Yeah, and sorry it's taken us so long to get this episode out. Technical issues, getting all the people in the studio, but we're good to go now. We'll be talking to Naz Khan, who's a cycle instructor and activist from North Manchester, from Cheetham Hill.
And we've also got the leader of Trafford Council, Tom Ross, and his executive for climate and transport, Aidan Williams, who are going to share all the work they've been doing with Trafford Council to make them the best council as voted for by you for 2024. All
right, let's get started. But first, this week's update on news on active travel in Greater Manchester, Deansgate.
Yeah, and it's Deansgate again, Deansgate, the main road, the artery road coming into the city centre, the boulevard coming in, the oldest Roman road in the city. And Deansgate's contentious because Deansgate, to me, it's the face of this sort of changing city that we have, active travel coming along, more people walking and cycling, removing private motor vehicles in the city centre. It's all coming to a head on Deansgate, and it's because Manchester City Council, they're building a cycle route along Deansgate, which is going to connect to the Chawton Cycleway and also the A56 work, which we're going to discuss with Tom Ross and Aidan Williams as well, Trafford Council. So there's a lot riding on this this connection to Deansgate, and it's the first piece of active travel infrastructure really in the city centre that we've seen. We've seen a lot of suburban active travel work, but we haven't really seen a big cycleway like this go through the city centre. And for that reason, it's causing a lot of newspaper articles, a lot of clicks online. So we're going to talk you through now what that means and, what we can do as campaigners to sort of diffuse that kind of tension online.
Yeah, so what's happening on Deansgate? Let's break it down. It's a bi-directional cycleway, the bit of it that they're building at the moment down by Great Northern Warehouse. Motor traffic down Deansgate has been reduced to 1 lane southbound. Again, on that stretch from Peter Street down to the junction with what's the name of the road?
Street. Yeah. So if you drive in now in Deansgate, you can only leave basically. You can't drive into Manchester that way, and that's going to tie into a bigger picture of network of a circulation plan, let's say, around the city centre for driving. So there is more to come, I guess, on that. But like Andy Burnham said on the phone in, we have to change the way we drive and travel, in Manchester, because hundreds of thousands of people are living in the city centre now, and there's only going to increase with the amount of towers they're building, the amount of urban, high density urban living we're going to see in the city centre. So people have to travel differently. We have to change the way we travel. So make sure that people can't drive into and through the city centre, because one of the big issues we have in the city centre is instead of using the ring road, which you should be using, Google Maps, Waze, it's directing people straight through the city centre into residential streets, shopping streets, destination streets, where we should really be having a calm, nice environment for people to enjoy the city centre. So it's important that there is a plan to sort of manipulate the traffic in the city centre, and that's the Deansgate scheme with the bus gate and the one-way system is part of that. But what we're also seeing is bi-directional cycle lanes through the heart of the centre. Now, there was supposed to actually be cyclops junctions with some east-west links, but we actually lost them because there was concerns around the amount of pedestrian space with a cyclops junction. So, there has actually been a compromise on the cycling side to increase the amount of pavement space, which I think is fine. It's the city centre. Most people are walking. But there's been a lot of hysteria. People seem to... What do you think about this, Will? People seem to be very, I'd say, triggered by photos of cycle lanes with lots of paint and lots of curbs. And do you think they're ugly?
No, not at all. I think construction work and roadworks is always disruptive and always ugly. And we saw it when the Chawton Cycleway was getting built, that actually by far the worst time to be trying to drive through and around Chawton and to run a business even in Chawton was when it was all blocked off by cones and barriers and men at work signs.
Yeah.
Now, Deansgate is going to come through that very shortly and come out the other side. And what is currently a big barriered off section of road space will, and I'll stake my reputation on this, be filled with people using it on bikes all 100%. The time. I think this is the thing I find really baffling is so many comments from triggered individuals saying like, "Oh, I don't see any cyclists." It's a construction site. Shut.
HS2's got no trains on it yet.
Yeah.
You cannot cycle down Deansgate at the moment. It's all blocked off. And
the other one I see a lot of from people is people saying, "Oh, the city has a conspiracy plan so that you can't drive through the city centre." I'm like, that's not a conspiracy. There's no reason to drive through the city centre. If you have a business in the city centre, if you live in the city centre, you absolutely might need to drive to your house or to your business in and out of the city centre. If you want to get from one side of the city to the other, the way you should do that is not through the shopping precincts, not through the middle. This is intentional, that you can't just expect to come to a busy, like the second city of the UK, the absolute like hub of North England, and expect to like race your car down a shopping street at 30 miles an hour.
All the best cities that people love going on holiday to, those city breaks they love going to in Europe, they're all nice traffic calm.
The Ramblas in Barcelona. Exactly. Weren't you there recently?
Yeah, I was. Although I don't think I went to that part of Barcelona. You put me on the spot. No, modern cities cannot be driven through. It's just something that we're all having to, come to terms with, whether you're a driver or not. So it's just the way that cities are going, and it makes cities better. It makes cities more livable, more enjoyable. It makes, more people visit them. Tourism goes up, and Deansgate is just, part of that journey. And in this moment, it feels like a big friction point.
I mean, this part of Deansgate has shops and restaurants and cafes. I feel like walking down there over the years, I've not felt like it's the busiest, most customer-friendly part of Deansgate. And I think part of what this scheme will do, intentionally or otherwise, is start to address that. We know from research that TfL did in London that cyclists and pedestrians are more likely to stop in shops, are more likely to spend money, are more likely to benefit businesses than car traffic.
I can't wait to film, people cycling home at rush hour on Deansgate, hordes of people cycling down the Chorlton Cycleway home. It's going to be great. And that's the content. I don't think Walk Ride really needs to be doing much right now. I think it's all noise. Sometimes you don't need to add fuel to that fire, especially when there's nothing to say, because it's not open yet. So once it's open, we'll be batting, out there for the cycleway. And until then, just sit tight, wait till it's open. Welcome, congratulations Trafford on winning the Walk Ride GM award for Best Council in 2024. And this is a great opportunity to hear from Trafford Council and understand, why you won that award and why people think that you're the best council. So I'm excited to see what you have to say. So we've got Tom here, who's the leader of Trafford Council, but we've also got Aidan as well, the exec for Climate and Transport. So we're going to get going with Tom. So nice to see you.
Well, thank you Walk Ride GM for giving us the award. It's a pride of place in my office at the moment, and there is a bit of a battle between me and the public health team as to who will take ownership of the trophy. But it's kind of the culmination of a couple of years of change that we've had in Trafford. I was frustrated when I came in as leader, and Aidan, who had been in his exec member for a good few months before I became leader, we were both frustrated at the rate of change we were seeing within Trafford. We understood that there was a need out there to do much more around improving cycle lanes, improving pedestrian crossings, making things much more accessible for all. So we put about trying to change that. So we had an initial meeting with Vernon and with Dame Sarah Story from the Mayor's office, and it just went from there. We secured multi-million-pound investment to upgrade some really crucial junctions for going into and out of Manchester city centre. We have explored a number of school streets, and we are looking to grow the network much more. So it's good to get the award, but we recognise that there's a lot more we want to achieve over the next couple of years as well.
Yeah, and there's I know that speaking to other councils, specifically Manchester, there's other people who want to steal or take this award from you next year. So does that sort of keep you hot on your toes?
It certainly does, to the point that imminently I have got a roundtable meeting happening at the town hall between Aidan, myself, a couple of other exec colleagues, Transport for Greater Manchester, our public health team, our highways team, so that we can look at what we're going to do next. Now that the North Trafford active travel corridor is complete, how do we spread out? How do we use the really exciting regeneration projects that we've got going, so including Old Trafford regeneration, to fix some difficult problems such as the White City roundabout, which you'll recall from the cycle safari we did in 2023 was horrendous, and I wouldn't have gone near it had I not been part of a group of cyclists trying to navigate that junction. So there's a lot more we want to do as we spread out the network across Trafford and link in with Manchester and Salford.
I think for me, the reason I'm so pleased that we secured the award is that it's taken us a while to get to the delivery phase of our active travel ambitions in Trafford, and I think we'd acknowledge that, wouldn't we? That it took too long, and that was really frustrating. So it's really pleasing now that we're starting to put interventions in place that people appreciate them and value them. I think the challenge for us now is trying to keep that pace going, that momentum around delivery. We've identified where we want to fill in gaps around that northern intervention that we've done. So Tom's referenced White City. We've already done a scoping study of what can be done there to connect Trafford through to Salford, and the excellent active travel corridor that they've created down Trafford Road. But we've also started doing scoping studies to see what we can do around Seymour Grove, connecting the northern part of Trafford's border to fantastic cycleway in Chorlton that Manchester City Council have put in. So, we want to try and retain our award, but at the same time, we'll acknowledge that if Manchester are successful next year, or Salford or Stockport, that's a success for all of Greater Manchester, because people aren't only travelling around in Trafford. Trafford residents, they're wanting to go into other cities on either side of us, So if all the local authorities are winning, then that's a win for Greater Manchester all round, I think.
Great. I mean, it's great to hear you talk about the network approach, which we harp on about at Walk Ride all the time, that, it isn't just about building one flagship route and then sitting on your laurels. It is about joining it up so that all kinds of journeys can be made, the ones you know about as high demand and the ones you don't necessarily know about. The other thing you touched on a minute ago in the difference of Trafford's approach to some of the other councils is the involvement of public health. I wonder if you'd like to touch on that for a moment.
If I make a start, and then Aidan will be able to fill in much more than me, but one of the things we have are very engaged, very proactive public health officers at the council. We are so lucky with our public health team, most of whom cycle into the town hall. And they were keen to work with our contractor, Amy, as part of One Trafford, to look at what they can do to help deliver active travel. And I think it's fair to say, because it's quite a new concept, there was a bit of a what's going on here moment to start off with, but the work that they have done has been fantastic. So before I pass on to Aidan, one of the things they did last year through the activation monies that come through with the new junctions is Beat the Streets. So that got people out tapping different beat boxes across the Stretford Old Trafford area over the course of the spring of last year. Just another way of getting people active, getting people involved in the neighbourhoods, getting people interested. But if it weren't for public health kind of really championing that, driving that forward, looking at ways we can use the activation funding, we wouldn't have had that element to what was already a successful junction upgrades we were doing.
Yeah, and I think their approach, the public health team take a different sort of approach when they think about active travel to say our highways engineers are brilliant and they're capable of coming up with fantastic designs for Cyclops junctions. They're capable of thinking about how you redistribute highway space that enables people to engage in active travel. But I think the public health aspect is about thinking slightly differently around, well, what are the barriers to your everyday person who's perhaps not confident in cycling or perhaps isn't has relied on their vehicle as their primary choice of transport. and trying to understand what interventions we can put in place to support people who are interested in exploring active travel but aren't quite confident enough yet. So they've been doing some fantastic work around supporting our school streets. They've assisted councillors in Trafford in setting up bike libraries so that people who perhaps don't have their own bike and every so often want to access cycle provision but aren't within the Beryl Bike Network as yet, they can, the Starling Bike Network, they can go to one of our bike libraries and use their library card and hire out a bike. So it's about soft interventions as well as the hard interventions on the highway.
And how important do you think, like, the public health side of it is in terms of winning the argument? Because we find that the sort of, when you go down that sort of highways engineer route of sort of, well, you know, this is how it should look, this is how, and people kind of get switched off. But when it's a bit more about public health and it's about children playing in the street or people having NHS waiting list going down and stuff like that, does it sort of click a bit more in a council?
Yeah, I think it certainly does, and it's the way that they are able to engage with families, so parents, carers, children, in terms of the messaging. So if you look at the school streets example, they have been able to communicate a story through talking with people of all ages about the benefits of the school streets. It becomes the play street for a little bit at the start and end of the day. People can no longer taste the cars, which is a big thing that's come through. They have this energy there that can come across a lot better than a technical highways report. So they become an integral part of what we're doing in Trafford around the active travel piece.
Yeah, and it's about behaviour change in a way that supports residents rather than tells residents what to do. Nobody at Trafford Council is saying you cannot use your car if you want to, but it's about saying if you want to rebalance your life and how you're going about your day-to-day activities, we'll support you to try and explore that. And I know, you know, we want to talk about co-benefits of active travel. It's not just about one thing. It's not just about reducing car use. It's not just about improving health, physical and mental, actually. It's about a whole range of different co-benefits.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and it just reflects on a conversation I had on the doorstep on Saturday, where, you know, we often get cycle lanes comes up as a bugbear for someone, and it's kind of just having that conversation, listening, but then just saying about the fact it's about sharing the space. No one's taking away your right to drive, but we're looking at how better we share that space, and crucially, I mean, the particular person had grandchildren. So how you get your grandkids across the road safer with a new upgraded junction. So there are ways of reframing the discussion that we're all learning, and I think we're getting better at.
And I think we're learning too. You know, when we started Walk Cry Gem, you know, we were probably slightly veering towards that sort of technical highway side, and then, you know, it's important that we have that knowledge, but also I think, you know, winning hearts and minds, that is 101 of what we do. And I think, especially in this sort of modern era of social media and the sort of bubbles that people can get in and sort of the sort of backlash you can see online, I think coming up with new angles and new arguments and new sort of perspectives is a really important part. And especially at Walk Cry Gem, just touching back on sort of social media, we sometimes, if you know, how does it affect you as an elected representative when you see a sort of barrage of negative opinions online, and how important is it when groups like Walk Cry Gem and our members and people, you know, our members who live locally in Trafford, you know, try and counteract that sort of that pushback and come with more positive attitude and to showcase, like, you know, what these sort of schemes and the future of sort of active travel can be.
I think the positivity of Walk Cry GM and Walk Cry Trafford as well has been brilliant in terms of countering some of that narrative around the work that we're looking to do. And I see that you've been doing the same with the Deansgate stuff recently as well in Manchester, which has been really good to see, because social media, it can be a really unpleasant place, and you'd have to be particularly courageous and have a lot of time on your hands if you wanted to get into an argument online. I see them all the time now. You know, I've seen them since I became leader. It first started with the cones, now cycle lanes. It's just tied into everything that we do. And it's not something that I would respond to personally, but it's always very reassuring to see others, people advocating for change, do it. And I've seen that in a few occasions on social media locally. The Kingsway work we had done in Stretford last year, people were really trying to wind up the population around it, but then so many people, including yourselves, came in and got a huge reach for what we did there, and got us onto a kind of national platform with the work that happened in Kingsway, and that meant a heck of a lot to me, I have to say. It just seeing that positivity there, it just went, no, we are doing the right thing here. And, unless people come forward with reasonable cases as to why they're concerned, which of course I'd always engage with, I always focus on what the positive is, because it just kind of confirms that we're on the right track.
Yeah, no, I'd echo that. And I think, social media is increasingly becoming quite an unpleasant space, isn't it? Sort of toxic, like a cesspit. But what I'd say is, we're prepared to stick to our guns. We stuck to our guns with the A56. We're now seeing the bespoke cycle lanes go in. They've resited the bus stops. I think it looks fantastic. Joins up through Talbot Road with the cycle-up junctions that I think look fantastic. So we'll stick to our guns, but it is so important for us also to hear that feedback from the active travel community and people who are interested in joining the active travel community. I think one of the things that's been really appreciated on our side about the way that Walk Ride GM have operated is the support you gave us with our active travel forum, recently reconstituted, and I felt really warmed actually to see members of the public, residents of Trafford, turning up and saying, I don't feel that confident around cycling, so I was just coming along really to see the approach you're taking and whether or not engaging in your active travel journey could be for me. So I think we are winning hearts and minds. It's a difficult process, but we're getting there.
And the results, for from when funds get allocated to when you design it and then when it gets built, that can take like half a decade to a decade sometimes. And you really got to stick at it as a politician, because in that time between then, you've got no results, but you've got people constantly questioning your decisions and what you're doing. So what I love about the B Network, Active Travel B Network at the moment, is we have got results now that we can point at, and that's been so crucial to us as a campaign, because like we were just saying in Stockport, like we can point to Trafford and say, look, Trafford's got this, and people, the cycling levels have gone up, and it really works as a resource for us, and it's that winning hearts and minds, it almost snowballs like at that point.
Yeah, I think we're in a really exciting moment actually, because what initially seemed like random interventions, you're doing a cycle lane here, but it doesn't actually take you anywhere, or it takes you maybe 5-10 minutes down a particular road. They no longer feel that random, these interventions. Now you can see that they're starting to become part of a coherent network. And I think that's really exciting, I have to say, because for me, there's now, if we proceed with the Seymour Grove works that we're currently scoping and in the early stages of design for, I'll be able, as a Stretford Town Centre resident, to cycle from Stretford Town Centre, where I live, to Whalley Range, where my sister lives, the entire route via a protected cycle lane. And I think, it's taken time, but that's so worth it. I
mean, that's what we see time and time again really achieves behaviour change, is just having a route where from start to finish people can feel safe, taking their whole family walking or on bikes without the threat of mixing with traffic along the way. So I think that's something Trafford has done really well. And speaking of results in the Kingsway scheme as well, I think we'd just like to say here, it's one of the things our supporters have raised, sort of the quality of the scheme at Kingsway. I think there was some social media stuff about why are you building benches outside in Trafford, it always rains. But I work just around the corner from there, and they're used all the time, even in the winter. And if you get a ray of sunshine, there's someone out there like enjoying the space. It's a beautiful scheme.
It is a beautiful scheme, and I have to say, I'm pretty convinced that the three sun lounges are probably the most well-used street furniture we have in the borough at the moment. But in all seriousness, no, there's so many good things about it. So you've got the cycle lane there, you've got the space. I'll take my nephew to scoot up and down the much wider paving that we've got there. You've got the fact that we've got subs there, so looking at the proper drainage system, and then you compare it to what it looked like 3 or 4 years ago, and it was just horrible.
It was a dual carriageway.
Absolutely horrible. And one of the biggest things with the Kingsway project that a lot of people said to me in the years running up to it, because it has had a very long lead-in time, is don't you dare take that dual carriageway away. The traffic will be chaos. It's not. No. It's not. It's had no impact apart from pinch points twice a day, but that's nothing considerable. But the flow of traffic is fine along there.
And it slowed down through some actually quite clever interventions around materials that we've used on the highway, the introduction of the roundel, the way that we've shaped the place. So the flow of traffic has slowed down, but I think that's welcome, actually. It feels much safer. And it's really nice to see a town centre location where children and young people feel comfortable hanging out and just enjoying the space.
And it's sort of connected the community to its town centre again, which I think is really important, because we talk about the bigger picture, the high street, people having a sense of community and like being proud of where they're from.
Absolutely, and there's lots we can learn as we look to the future. So particularly that northern bit with the Old Trafford regeneration, Lamina Village next to Old Trafford tram stop, the former GMP HQ, which will be housing. So it's how we make sure we stitch in infrastructure that supports walking, wheeling, cycling for the hundreds of people that will be living there in the next 5 to 10 years.
And that's going to be important as well, because what we're starting to see with some of the development of North Trafford is that it's not going to be possible for a lot of residents to each have their own vehicles. So we're going to have to think differently about moving around that space and into and out of the city centre.
And sort of talking about a holistic approach there, like how does this new sort of active travel sort of, let's call it revolution, how does that tie into other departments? We talked about public health, but what about, like planning? Like how can planning get on board with this in terms of sort of removing that idea of minimum car park spaces and that kind of in higher density and urban settings, so that we can really get people like to sort of live car free and more sort of sustainable?
There's lots of planning. So there's a couple of examples. So first of all, the design code that Trafford launched last year, and that brings in future planning applications, future housing developments, what the street scene looks like, how do you cater for multimodal transport. So there's that element, but our scrutiny committee last summer did a reducing car dependency scrutiny task and finish report, and there is a lot in that in terms of bringing the different departments of the council together, working with strategies at a GM level as well, and looking at how we do enable people to have that choice to move to other modes of transport, because we've got to make it easier for people. So there's a lot we can do within different departments of the council, and there's a lot of work we've already done to support that.
And do you think are there private entities who could be brought on board with that as well? Like, Manchester United football ground, the cricket, the Trafford Centre, all of these places could benefit from bringing more people, whether it's workers or visitors, to them by means that don't require tons and tons of car parking all over every square inch of land.
Yeah, they absolutely are important to that transition, and they know there's a very clear signal from me and from Aidan and from Trafford Council in general that this is what we want to see. We want to see more people using active travel routes, whether they're walking down a safe canal towpath, which can happen at some parts of the day, maybe not others. You're looking at the routes into and out of the city, walking, wheeling, cycling. So there's a lot we can do working with them, and there is an appetite from them there, to be fair. I think there's a long way to go, but there is an appetite to explore that.
Brilliant.
I think it's also understanding the role that other forms of public transport have to play in enabling active travel as well. Manchester United's a brilliant case in point. You've got the football stadium itself is flanked by Metrolink stops on all sides pretty much. So we know that thousands of football fans attending United every time they're at home travel on the Met, and I think it's about connecting each individual form, bus, Metrolink, cycle hire, active travel in terms of your own cycling or walking, and just empowering people not to have to use their car as the first port of call.
And that ties us perfectly into the B Network, finally getting that tap in, on all routes in a month today, isn't it? So
and there's a challenge there for us as well around continuing that transition for the B Network. I'm looking forward to, for instance, and I've spoken at the B Network committee about this, the trialling we're looking at for bikes on trams. It feels like a very exciting moment for us in Greater Manchester that finally the B Network is materialising into what it was conceived of those years ago.
All right, and on that note, I think we'll end because I think we've got through so much here, and it's been a great conversation. And I hope. I can't be biased. Maybe we'll see you here next year.
We will do our best. But if another local authority wins, as Aidan says, we're all winners in GM if we're progressing active travel.
I mean, we love the competition, I have to say. It's quite fun for us, I have to say.
But we've got plans, and we want to expand.
So thanks so much, Aidan. Thanks so much, Tom.
So our next guest is Naz Khan, recipient of the People's Active Travel Champion Award. Congratulations, Naz.
Thank you.
So welcome to the podcast. Oh, I should also say, Naz Khan is also a member of the Walk Ride GM steering group. So she's an in-house campaigner representing North Manchester, and we love to have her aboard.
Can I just say that did not affect the votes for the award?
I hope it didn't.
Democratically won on the Discord vote. So yeah.
Thank you.
So Naz, I think as a sort of introduction, could you tell us about what made you take up cycling and get into the active travel world?
I'll give you the fast version. So from childhood, I was unable to cycle because it wasn't culturally appropriate. It wasn't a thing that girls should do, according to my mum. I know that's not everyone's view, but back then it was my mum's. And then it was something I wanted to do pretty much most of my adult life. Did pluck up the courage at the age of about 35, and I said, this is something that I really need to do now. I think it's quite important to recognise that I was enabled. Somebody borrowed me a bike, and then I practiced in my garden, and from there, the rest is, I guess, history. Carried on doing it, and I want more and more people from diverse communities to join and do more cycling.
What about cycling? You say that your mum didn't want you to cycle, and cultural reasons why it's not a thing. Like, what made you persevere and want to continue to cycle against maybe not the odds, but against the societal sort of pressures?
That's a very good question, actually. I've never really stopped to think what actually made me want to do it. I guess it's a case of I'm quite defiant. So if I'm not allowed to do something, I want to do it. So it's a case of, hang on a minute, why am I not allowed to do this? Unless there's an actual clear religious reason. And there wasn't, and it never made sense to me. And apart from that, I guess everyone gets places really, really fast, don't they? They get there quicker on a bike than they do walking, and it's always annoying when you're sat in traffic and somebody's on a bike going past really quickly. It's like, oh, I wish I had a bike sort of moment. So I think I had plenty of them over the years, which probably did obviously instill that. In addition to that, my children were both cycling, and I was chasing behind them. I got a bit tired of doing that. So I thought it's about time I joined them. So yeah, there was that as well.
So as you do a lot, I have to say, like when you joined the Walk Ride GM steering group, I was like, wow, this woman's doing so much stuff. I couldn't believe it.
So you're a bikeability instructor.
I am indeed, yes.
You run a cycle hub in Heaton Park.
Mm-hmm. It's in the infancy stages. So like you said, in addition to being a bikeability instructor, which I'm affiliated with Transport for Greater Manchester as an instructor, Nationwide Cycling Academy as an instructor, and also Bike Right. All three are training providers, adult and children. I'm a qualified bike mechanic, woohoo, like that. And then also I have obviously this passion and desire to support more and more people in the community, and that's where the Community Cycling Hub has taken its first steps, I guess.
And when you say people in the community, I know that you work with a lot of South Asian and Middle Eastern women. Is that sort of by design, or do you find that these are the people who are coming to you off their own backs?
It's definitely not by design. I mean, my role as an instructor is to support anyone and everyone on a bike. Doesn't matter where you're from, what background you are. If you would like cycle training, then I'm hopefully one of the instructors out there that will support you with that. With regards to how people come to me, the most recent cohort of women are actually not South Asian, they're Arab women. And they did see a poster which had me on it, and it sort of invited them to come on board, and without the image of a woman in a hijab, which is a head covering that I wear, without that, they would not have joined. So they find that sense of belonging and acceptance. And I think one of the ladies did say in the past, it's a very English way of, riding is for more of the English. It's never been seen as something that we can do as part of our culture, but to see another woman from a Muslim background, not necessarily Arab or Black African, it's any Muslim background, does instill that sort of sense of, I'd like to join and I'd like to be part of this, and ultimately they are doing it for their health and well-being.
I mean, it's interesting that I think the word of mouth posters, sort of in-person interactions, are something that Walk Ride maybe needs to learn from, because we started off as maybe a sort of quite affluent South Manchester based people starting the group, very heavy on social media presence, which has, done great things for us, but maybe we're not reaching every community that we'd like to across the whole city region.
I do think Walk Ride have a fantastic campaign. It's one of the best I've seen, and that's why I was keen to be part of the steering group after meeting Ian. I do believe in the cause that Walk Ride have, and I do believe that whilst you may not be able to measure things immediately, the work that we're putting in at Walk Ride is going to have a long-standing effect. It is a legacy for people not just riding, also walking. And I think it's quite important that people listen to the challenges that some face, including barriers to being able to access it, safer walking routes. So the work that we do is phenomenal, it really is. But yes, there is definitely room to branch out more, to become more diverse in terms of reaching groups that are from marginalised communities, and at the same time voicing the fact that we are here for everyone. So it's not just one person, and that everyone will welcome more and more people regardless of where they're from.
So how important is Heaton Park as a kind of hub for the sort of work you do? Because when I went to, the first time we met was at Eid Cycle Fest, and Walk Ride had a stall there. You weren't involved with Walk Ride at that time, and that's where you met Ian actually to join a steering group. But the thing that struck me when I went there was, as someone who doesn't really go into North Manchester that much, was the sort of mix of communities at this event. I'm Jewish, and there was Jewish people there, there was Muslim people there. It just felt like quite this is, a melting pot of all these people, and everyone's just getting on a bike, and the kids are there riding, trying it out. I don't know, it just really struck me as something that I hadn't actually seen happen in Manchester before, in terms of that sort of bringing people together to try cycling from loads of different backgrounds. I mean,
coming back to how important Heaton Park is, it's absolutely amazing. It's a space that I've known since I was sort of 5 years old. I'm from Cheetham Hill, and there's not many green spaces. Well, there's not a vast amount of space being quite close to city centre. So being able to go slightly further out and find a jewel, should we say, in such a busy area, it's quite amazing to be there. Not just that, there's so many different activities, so many different things that you can see. I actually led a walk there last week with a group of women with the children, and what was really funny is there's parts of Heaton Park that I've actually never seen, and that's because I always go on the tarmac route, get from A to B and back, and there's an amazing forestry, nature reserve-y part of Heaton Park with a lovely stream and hundreds of squirrels, and it's just absolutely incredible to be lost in that oasis, especially for your mental health. It's just, it fits everything. So there's lots of good things about Heaton Park, and yes, it borders lots of areas. So we've got Bury local area, you've got obviously Rochdale local authority, and in a way, Salford it's quite close to, and obviously Manchester City Council as well. So the local authorities, there's 4 key local authorities and lots of wards that are really close by. So there's lots of people that can actually come and know of Heaton Park. It's so well known that for it to become a community hub of any sort is just magical. Yeah. I think I've always dreamed of it as a child, and I can't believe I'm here. Yeah. So yeah, it is great.
And how Heaton Park, great. It's a great oasis for active travel. Mm-hmm. But outside those walls, it is pretty hostile, isn't it, in terms of the road environment?
It's a desert, you might say.
It's a desert, you might say. And, you know, how important is it to you to take that sort of philosophy, that mantra, that kind of oasis from Heaton Park and take it to the streets, take it to where people live, you know?
It's really important. I think coming on board with Walk Ride, one of the main factors for me was seeing how much amazing infrastructure and great facilities are elsewhere, and it needs celebrating. It's absolutely phenomenal that we've got such great infrastructure and accessible routes, but then as soon as I head towards home, it can be daunting for other people. I mean, I'm quite fortunate that I'm slightly thicker skinned and the A roads are sort of normal for me, but Cheetham Hill Road can be disastrous to cycle down, and quite scary to say the least. And yeah, it shouldn't ever feel like that. Cycling should never feel scary. Cycling should never feel like you're in danger. And sadly, yes, I do, and others have felt like they're in danger cycling through Cheetham Hill, other parts of North Manchester. So I think it's really important that collectively everyone comes together and says, let's work on this area now.
Yeah, and I think like the reason, like there's lots of reasons why, you know, South Manchester's had more infrastructure than North Manchester, let's say, but the reason, the way I distill it is that there's a lot of engaged people who are demanding it in South Manchester, and it's important that also happens in North Manchester. And the work you're doing is really bringing that voice to North Manchester. And I think that, you know, if you want to, you know, if you live in North Manchester, in any of the wards, in Rochdale, in Bury, Oldham, you know, in that kind of area, you know, get involved, you know, springboard off the back of the work that you're doing, get to Heaton Park and really get stuck in, because if enough people come along with a voice, then we can make North Manchester as safe and as easy to walk and cycle as, you know, other parts of the city.
100%, yeah. I think it's not just get involved with me. There's a lot of fantastic local groups that are doing great work with cycling. I know there's groups in Bolton that have taken it to the next level as well. So get involved with your local groups, find out. There are lots of things online that'll signpost you. Transport for Greater Manchester is Greater Manchester, so it's not just looking at Cheetham Hill or South Manchester, it's right across the different boroughs. So I think it is important, if you do want to find a way to connect to cycling, there's lots of ways to do that through Transport for Greater Manchester as well as Walk Ride.
Oh, that was great, wasn't it?
Wow, I'm blown away. I can't, you know, I'm so happy, excited we got, you know, these people on to talk, to give their perspective, their stories, and I think our listeners are going to be so thrilled with that, because it's going to energise them. It's going to give them so much information and you know, understanding of where we're heading with active travel campaigning and delivery.
So tune in weeks to come, because the next episode is going to have Ryan Bradshaw from Lee Day Solicitors, who's been working on the barrier campaign that Walk Ride signed up to remove discriminatory barriers across the city. And
we've also got the winners for the best homeschool travel, which are Chris and Matt, both deputy head, and the parents setting up the school street. They're going to talk about the St Thomas Primary School Street next week, or the next few weeks. We'll see when the episode comes out. I'm so excited, and you know, we're on a roll here. We're really telling some great stories.
Yeah, if you know anyone who'd be interested, who's got something to say about active travel worth putting on the podcast, send them our way.
Yeah, we take suggestions. We'll have anyone on the podcast who's doing good work in active travel, not just the winners of last year's awards. You know, anyone can come on. So yeah, if you want to jump on, tell your story, be our guest.